So I'm just amazed, like totally amazed at how dumb people are. It's got to come to a realization at some point that you're not competent at what you're doing. And you're lowering the standards of what should be knowledge into your opinions, which is getting you into further trouble because you're incapable of discerning what the truth is in the matter. I don't know what to say anymore. I'm just at this point where I look around and I think, you are well past retarded. So let's look at something here that I think we should all pay attention to, because it's not wrong in what it says, but its propaganda leads to fear to stop you from looking at the truth. So at some point, we have to address this. So I'm going to just look at a video quickly.
She refused to comply with an officer's request. The woman and her male passenger argued they were not in the officer's jurisdiction and were not driving, but rather travelling in the area.
You guys don't even know what yous are on about.
I need your most senior on duty.
You don't have any jurisdiction on this land. Look out.
You're under arrest.
You're a freak.
Yep.
Yeah, man, I would love to just get you one-on-one.
Looking at this to start with, you can already see an immediate defiance from the people in the car. And there is no godly approach to this. It's just a rambling of claims that at the end of the day hold no foundations in the law that you want to uphold. You don't realise the standing at which you are failing to stand in to be able to even make claims in the first place. And then second to that, the roadside with these agents of a peacekeeping force is not the right place to do those such things. You're only furthering the harm to yourselves by acting like fools. So let's just look a little bit further at this news presentation.
Look, their core belief were established in that video, that they are sovereign citizens, that they're not subject to the laws that the rest of us are subject to.
So here we say hello to David Halpin. This little war criminal magistrate committed what would start, this would lead to a series of events that hopefully will see this man have to follow the law that he speaks of. But here we have him painting an ideal upon you that you are sovereign citizens. He is using an American ideology to paint you with a tarred brush. There is a reason for this, and there is probably a reason for David Halpin himself appearing on Channel 7. But here he's not wrong. You are acting foolish, and these peacekeeping forces have a right in international law to treat you like the debtors that you are.
That the Queen's not the Queen, that police aren't really legitimate police, and that courts aren't legitimate courts, and that somehow by way of a contract or otherwise they've separated themselves completely from the laws of the land.
So David is playing on all of your ignorances here, but pointing out a few things to me that seem very relevant as lies coming out of your mouth, David. Most of these people aren't going to see those lies, but he isn't wrong to all of you. The premise that you believe these ideals, which are vastly incorrect or somewhat a lunacy, leads to David using some of the words that he's used in a bid to put fear into you that they are the lawful authority on this land. They are by force alone. They are by manipulation, fraud, deceit, and so many other things. And David has just been caught out in his lies, right here on video. But it will be totally unapparent to you because you're unable to fathom the foundations that hold this rule of law in play in the first place.
It's concerning, isn't it? It's believed the killers who shot dead 2 police officers and a civilian last month in regional Queensland frequented conspiracy websites and also had this sovereign citizen view. Do you think there's been an increase in this kind of thinking? And how dangerous can it be?
But there's a spectrum. At one end, there's those who just want to challenge the law and raise old common law doctrines and issues, and that's a positive thing. I think challenging the law is important and sensible, and it's how laws change. But at the other end of the spectrum is the hardcore believers in sovereign citizenship or pseudo-law, where they don't see themselves at all as bound by the law. They see the law as having absolutely no authority. And the hard edge is a dangerous edge. The Oklahoma bomber was a straw man sovereign citizen in the United States.
You can quickly see how they have jumped from tarring you with a sovereign citizen label. They jump to the farthest extremes of anything possible to now link what your beliefs are to the murder of Queensland police officers who are in fact peacekeeping force under a foreign crown, occupying this country under United Nations model laws. These things aren't apparent to all of you. They have what's called peace, order, and good governance in your failures to stand up as a people and be the people that you are, while you continue to pull this stupid stuff that does nothing but demonstrate that you are actually children and lunatics, at which a guardian might have a right at law to keep you as ward of the state. It might be in your actions that you open doors by acting like ladies and gentlemen instead of whores and thieves.
Has there been any success of these so-called sovereign citizens fighting their claims in court?
Well, despite what the websites say and despite what some people who follow this pseudo-law sovereign citizenship say, there has not been a single successful case in any jurisdiction throughout Australia. It's obvious when you think about it for a second that you can't just remove yourself from the law by some sort of putting your names in capital or declaring yourself a sovereign citizen. It just simply is, it's gobbledygook. And the courts have treated it as such time after time.
You can see how they have jumped into a far extreme to put fear into you, when the truth of the matter is that David Halpin is being used on the media for specific purpose due to court case that defined a win, a solitary and singular and only win out of all of them in the last 20 to 30 years. Isn't that right, David? The problem for David in all of this is that his actions as a magistrate led to the incarceration of many men in New South Wales that were then formally tortured under international humanitarian law, Rule 90, by Corrective Services and Forensic Mental Health New South Wales. David is the conduit to send people into that system at which they were legally tortured by those facilities, and those facilities directly are what denied access to United Nations investigators who were looking for acts of torture and forced medical procedure. We will see as we move forward that David is actually the guilty party that provided the inmates to forensic mental health so that they could be tortured in the first place.
It's obvious when you think about it for a second that you can't just remove yourself from the law by some sort of putting your names in capitals, declaring yourself a sovereign citizen. It just simply is, it's gobbledygook. And the courts have treated it as such time after time. But it doesn't stop the adherents, particularly in traffic matters, from making these pretty bizarre claims.
Well, nice to know it hasn't been successful so far. David, thanks for joining us.
Yes, it is nice to know that it hasn't been successful so far, David, when it actually has. In the case that we are discussing under Follow the Rabbit series defines very specifically that curial right that you seem to want to deny everybody that has now been backed up by a Supreme Court Justice of New South Wales, David. Weren't you a magistrate in New South Wales? Wasn't it New South Wales Correctional Services that denied access to United Nations inspectors? Isn't it forensic mental health that commit that torture and forced medical procedure within those Corrective Services New South Wales facilities, David? Wasn't it you that sent people into those facilities? Wasn't it I that proved certain things within those facilities, David, that you will never discuss, will you, David? And it comes forward to a case, David, that demonstrates that you are in fact a war criminal that fails to follow the rule of law that you so promote. Is it not time now that you followed the rule of law that you're so adherently obligated to? I think it might be, considering that you had people tortured, considering that you were party to these claims directly, considering these claims were backed up by Justice of the Supreme Court of New South Wales and District Court of Queensland demonstrated police to be corrupt. So is it any wonder that you, David Halpin, would appear on Channel 7 propaganda news in a bid to defend this position that you as occupying forces hold in a peacekeeping mission? It's kind of obvious, isn't it, David? Now, these tards are tards. There's no question about it that nobody's addressing the real foundations at law at which make David the war criminal that he is. And when he speaks of the spectrum of people that are in this game, he's talking about me, and he's talking about what we've done over the last 15 years to prove without shadow of a doubt that there is a curial usurpation of the Commonwealth of Australia that has taken place. And in that usurpation there falls rule of law, in which the rules of usufruct must take place, mustn't they, David? So if one took an oath of allegiance at the peril of one's own life, Labour Code Article 26 becoming Hague Conventions, it would therefore go to say that you've done a big error of law, sitting on a bench, allowing torture to occur at your hand. And these are direct accusations of you, David, given that there is a plethora of evidence now on court record that would demonstrate exactly what I'm saying. It's no wonder you're on Channel 7, a news team that sought to fabricate news over a mask event wherein they got police to be their actors on film. We watched it occur. These things don't occur around us for no reason. These things don't continue to occur around us for no reason. Rule of law sits at play, and Jesus said one thing very starkly apparent here, in that he did not come to break the law, David. He came to fulfill it. And if you've committed those international war crimes, then it should go to say that you should follow rule of law to its strictest and its finest, and make sure that you yourself face the tribunals of war crimes that you yourself have committed.